remains on the story. Arunodaya Mukherjee, BBC News, Washington.
Let's speak to Joe Moreno, who's a former federal prosecutor and Republican strategist. Joe, thank you very much for joining us. Good to have you with us here on BBC News. How much of an uphill struggle is it going to be for Donald Trump to get these damages out of the Wall Street Journal?
Well, good morning. So defamation cases are typically pretty difficult to prove, particularly against the media, which the courts give wide latitude on. So that being said, though, if this case proceeds, the Wall Street Journal will have to produce that letter, and they'll have to produce who allegedly gave it to them. And so they better basically kind of, put up or shut up. If they cannot do that, Donald Trump can say, look, they can't even produce what this document is, where it came from. And when they asked me about it, I told them it wasn't from me. And Donald Trump has been on a roll lately. Keep in mind, he got defamation settlements both from ABC and CBS in the last few months. And so I expect him to be very aggressive. And the Wall Street Journal is going to have to think about hard whether or not they really want to go through this process and reveal their source.
$10 billion, though, it's a lot of money, isn't it? And we're talking about the tension here, aren't we, between free speech and privacy?
Well, as a lawyer, I can tell you, we typically come out of the gate with very large dollar amounts, and the settlements from the two other networks that Trump has already gotten were something like $16 million each. So $10 billion is more posturing than something that's realistic.
What are the roots of all of this, though? What missteps have the Trump administration made that have got them to this point?
Well, I would say it's less of a legal mishap than it is a public relations one. I mean, for years, they portrayed the fact that the government was sitting on some treasure trove of information about this case, and it really built a life of its own over the years. And then when the Attorney General came into office a few months ago and said, I've got this binder of documents, this file of Epstein's case waiting to be reviewed and released, and then it turns out that there was nothing to release, I think people were really disappointed. And so this is kind of what happens when you build up a story without really knowing, one, if what you're promising exists, and two, if it legally can be released. And so I think now the Trump administration has backed itself into a corner with a completely unforced error, and now it's reaping the ramifications of that.
How then do they quieten the calls for this information, which, as you say, might not exist, might not be released because the court has got to decide that, and yet Donald Trump's supporters are still howling for this information to be made public?
Our system doesn't work where we just dump investigative files into the public domain. There are privacy issues to be concerned about. And so there's no doubt that there is some information that exists that did not come out in the trial of Elaine Maxwell, who followed Jeffrey Epstein's suicide. So now it's going to have to be gone through, and you have to look at things like names of victims, particularly minor victims, and if you want to release those names in public, or other names that were mentioned but not actually implicated. So now if you want to reveal those people's names in public, who then could have their own defamation actions and say, it's not right that my privacy rights were violated because I wasn't charged with anything. So there's a whole now problem where judges will have to go through this information. Grand jury testimony is not typically revealed to the public. And so, again, it's created this public relations mess with now a legal and privacy concern piled on top of it. That's going to be costly, it's going to be time intensive, and regardless of what they produce, still might not satisfy the base, which has been waiting for years for this supposed, again, treasure trove of information that might not actually exist.
Joe Moreno, former federal prosecutor and Republican strategist. Always good to talk to you. Thank you for your time.